So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a router with a 1/4 inch up spiral solid carbide and a guide, the matching guide bushing for it, right? And I'm going to use the same template that I was using earlier to mount. Everything is the same. The only thing I'm going to do is use a tool to pliers to pull those 3/4. Okay, so again, those were in there for mounting the tenons on the ends of the rails. Okay, so I'm using one of the 2 posts that I made. This is a prototype post. It's made out of 3 boards. It's a sandwich. It's hard to see that it's a sandwich. The only way you can tell, like up in here, you can see just a little bit different shade of the center board, which is a 3/4. Otherwise, the 2 outsides here and here, those are both 8/4. And then everything was done with Gorilla Glue and everything else. And then you can see the rough texture. I could still put another sand and varnish on there, but this is actually pretty good. And I can do that after I mount the hardware, so it's a non-issue. But I have a 30-inch, and then it's 4.5 by 4.5. It's actually slightly under 4.5. I should have been a little more careful about that, because then the jigs fit a little better. But it's 30 inches tall, so I'm just going to go on this one. I'm just going to go to 15, which is halfway, right? So I'm going to make a mark there. And again, it's varnished, so if you make a pencil mark, you're probably going to erase it, but I'm going to still be a little careful on that. But I just want to mark a very light line so that I can find that mark later if I need to. So then the next thing I'm going to do is grab my template. Oops, I gotta mount this thing. I haven't actually locked it in yet. So what I'm going to do is I have, let's see. Okay, on the micro bench, I have this one here is locked in with a U-bolt, and the same thing with that far one. So if I just put my piece in here, my workpiece, which is the post, right? And then I am going to let me just get the right driver. And the first one always takes a little bit longer, but I'm just going to spread that out a little bit, so then I can put my PVC in there to give it some protection. I don't want to wreck the post, right? So now I'm good to go. I can lock both of these guys in. Whoa, sorry about that. Now that thing's locked in position. She's ready to go. Then I take my same template and decide which one is it that I'm going to use for the template. And I have a number of options here. First of all, the spacing in the back here is 4.5. There's another slot here. These things can come out. They're not locked in there, but they can come out and put here and here, and then you have basically a 3-inch. So I work with 3-inch typically, and then 4.5 are my common numbers. And then there were those pegs that I had in earlier. Those were set up for 1 inch, which is the end grain. You can see why I prototype, right? If you come up with some common standard numbers, it just makes everything so much easier, especially when you're dealing with templates and jigs. But so on this one, I have a couple of options for mounting the tenons, and it depends on which tenon I'm going to mount. So in this case, I could either mount that one, or I can mount one of our DIYers, right? And then I have even a smaller one yet. Okay, so these are the threaded tenons. Again, these are not threaded yet because I wait until I mount them. Again, the DIYers, it's just easier to do the threading once you mount it on the end grain of a rail. And so those are just ready to go. They're drilled, they're cut, but they're 2 3/4 inch by 3/4. Okay, so that's one option. And then the same thing, similar tenon. These are the ones that I have fabricated for myself or my students, and then that's 2 3/4. But it's like 11/16. I intentionally do that. There's different reasons for it. I can explain it at some point when I get into the projects. And then on the smaller projects, I'll end up using this small 3-hole tenon, and that has to do with putting it on the end of a 3/4 inch board rather than a 1 inch. And there's a lot of other reasons for that. But those are basically what we're going to do. So that said, if we get to the tenon, excuse me, the template, the jig for routering, then what do we've got? Or I guess it would be a template. So again, when it's routering, I think you probably call it a template. When you're going to use it to mount something, it's probably a jig or something. I'm not sure. Anyways, but I've got the one here, right? Now that one is the router size for a 1/4-inch router a 1/4-inch bit in a router using a guide bushing. That guide bushing is going to follow along the outer. By the time it's done, it's going to make a rectangle that's going to fit that just right. Now, I don't do DI wires on these smaller ones. I go right up to the larger one because these are 5/8 inch wide, and 5/8 inch material is a little harder to get in flat bar. It's not readily available. You can get it, but it's not that easy, and then you can't get it. I don't think you can get it in stainless. So I just go right to 3/4, and that way there's all kinds of flexibility. You can buy this at a hardware store. All right, so here's where we're at. I marked it at the halfway point, and then I don't think the camera's going to pick it up, but right here there's what I call it a peephole, and that is it's a 1/4-inch hole. It's placed in there by the CNC, so it's exactly at the halfway point, which is picking up that line, so I can see that in there, and that's all I need to really do to align this thing. And then once it's aligned, lighting is changing here by the minute with the sun coming in and out. Then I'm going to take one of these clamps, a Bessie, right? And then I'm just going to put it on there as close as I can. I need to make sure it just stays below the flush so that the router, what you call it, you know what I mean, the plate doesn't hit it, right? Okay, so now she's centered. Somewhere behind here, I've got a 12-volt Milwaukee, 18-volt Milwaukee shop vac. Right back in here, just kind of hanging there, right on one of the red Harbor Freight carts, which then there's the micro bench that's mounted to that, right in the same holes that Harbor Freight put in there, you know, whenever they built that bench. And then now I'm going to router it. I'm going to put headgear on. And then again, it all depends on what we're going to do here. There's 3 settings on the router right there. There's that one. That's the first setting. That's going to take an 1/8 inch dip. Then I'm going to turn it, and then that'll take another 1/8 and then another 1/8. It all depends on what I want to do as far as depth goes. And since this is the tenon is going to go in here. Now, if I were on the other side, I might only do 2 because I might want to put a similar shaped washer in there, a rectangular washer like this, which is a 1/4 inch, and I might want that to be flush. So if I do, then I'm only going to do 2 passes. Again, that'll depend on each project. So for right now, because we're prototyping, I'm going to work on this one, which is the mortise itself, and get the headgear going. What I was doing is checking to see how well it slides, and because I had sprayed it with some silicone earlier, and it's still got plenty on it, so it's sliding just awesome. That is solid oak, by the way. So that was real time, so however long that took. And then if you look inside there is no sawdust, and that's just a little less than 1/8 of an inch, that first pass. So now I'm going to make 2 more passes, but again, the sawdust, there is none because of the template that I'm using and the combination between that and this. This is really an awesome plunge router, both the router and then the plunge attachment itself. And again, I'm not sponsored, so I really was looking forward to getting this when they first came out with it, and it has not disappointed me. And again, the other thing I like is that because it's Milwaukee, the Milwaukee nozzle that comes right with the 18 volt vac, it just slips right in there, and that's it. So now I'm gonna lift it up. I'm gonna send it over to the second notch. And then I'm going to turn it on, but then when I come down, I'm going to come down onto the second notch right there. Lock it in and go. Okay, I'm done to the second notch. Again, if we look inside, it's gone down another 1/8, and there's, again, still no dust. Lifting it up, turning to the next notch. These are all preset by, basically by Milwaukee. They're not adjustable. That's the only downside, and I know some people have said something about that in the reviews, but I'm okay with that. Some of the other ones will have screws on them that you can tweak them, really fine tune them, like a Makita's. So, but this works out just fine for me. Okay, so on that last pass, I made sure that I got not only to the ends, the corners, but also I made a back and forth, because sometimes you'll leave a little chip in there. But it's totally done now. And then again, that was 3 passes. So I'll take the template off. We're done with the template. Take my ear protection off as well. So the template comes off, and again, this template is used for all kinds of stuff. And by the way, the hole there is for the other side, but that is a pretty slick looking mortise. And then what I want to do is test it to see if it's going to fit. Okay, so I've got the DIY tenon. Now this one, again, is not threaded yet because I wait until they're mounted. It's much easier to do. And then I put that in there, and it's exactly what I'm looking for, is just a little bit of play, because that then allows you to the tweak that you need. But it's actually tight to the width, but a little bit of play in the length, right? And then I'm going to take that out of there. And then this is the threaded tenon that I basically, again, I have manufactured for me for my own use, and again on students. But that one, again, same thing. I want some play in there, and because that's all going to go away whenever you want, you can adjust it, and it's especially helpful. Again, I normally design with a reveal on each side so that you're not going to notice a 1/16 or an 1/8 of an inch. But if you try to put a 4.5 inch on a 4.5 inch and you don't have any room for reveal and you don't get this exactly right, well, it's really nice to be able to just move that a little bit. That's usually all you're going to need. So it does definitely work for what we're talking about. So we're good to go on the mortising. I have another post to do, but I'm going to finish this one out, and then I'll just put the other one on and repeat the process. All right, so I just made that mortise with the router, right? And there's a way that we can do it with a drill press as well, but I'm not going to be able to demonstrate that. And that's, by the way, that drill press thing, that's why the round ones here, there's 5 circles, right? And so it's basically 5 passes of a Forstner bit, and you have the same thing, but it fits that particular shape. And so it allows anybody that works with routers to use routers. Those that deal with drill presses use drill presses. So for this one, this is the one that we had done a little bit earlier, or depending on when you're catching this thing. But this is, I think it's prototype number 2, and I put a rounded, a 5-circle one, the fabricated one on one end, and then I put a 3/4 do-it-yourself one on the other end. So basically, this is what's going to happen is they're going to go into here like that, and then that's going to fit that way, or it can go into this way, this direction with the other type. And so now what we need to do is draw a bolt that's going to go down in through there. So what we need to do is eventually we're going to take a bolt and it's going to come up through there and it's going to go into the threaded tenon. That's why it's a tenon, right? Which prevents everything from, it prevents anything from twisting, just like a regular tenon. So it's not going to be able to twist like that. But the other thing is we want to be able to draw this tight to the post without having to use any kind of clamps. And then we're not going to use any glue. There's no adhesives. Other than when we make their rails and stuff like that, yes, but that's a totally separate process, and that doesn't have anything to do with the joinery. So, but you can see too why I wanted, I'm sticking with a 1-inch thickness, because these are 3/4 wide, right? That's 3/4 wide. So by doing it that way, we have a little bit of a hidden, everything is hidden, let's put it that way. So, but I want to be able to bring some bolts up from here. And there's, if a person can, if they want to just use standard bolts, they can, hex bolts. But I tend to lean more towards some of the, I like sockets, and they're more expensive. You have to buy a larger quantity, but basically that's going to come up in there. And there's a lot of reasons to do that type of bolt. And then there's another kind that's a button head. It's still a socket, but it's a button head. You can get those. These are all 5/16. And then if this were an exterior thing that's going to be taken apart and put back together again, like an outdoor shelter of some sort, maybe take it down seasonally, well, then everything is going to go to stainless steel. The bolts, the threaded tenons, you'd have to look into whether, I think you might be able to use aluminum threaded tenons, DIYs, but then use a stainless steel bolt with it. But anyways, and then there's another type of, I don't have any handy here that I can see. There's another type of socket that works out really well too. So what we need to do is we need to get a hole from this tenon, from this mortise, excuse me, right here. We need to get that down to there. And then on the other end, we have to decide what we want that to look like. So before I do anything else, what I'm going to do is mark a hole here. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to use one of my tenons, basically. There we go. Okay. So I've got this, and I'm going to use that as my mark. And there's we can do the same thing as we did earlier, which is we could use a hinge bit or whatever. But another kind of simple way to do it is, again, I'm prototyping, but I've been fooling with this, is I just take that, let it stretch out a little bit, and then I'm just centering that, right? Hit it with a hammer, and now you have exactly what you want. And again, that's all I did was just put a bolt in there and use that. So now I have that. Now, if you don't have a drill press, then you can do this with a regular hand drill. It's just 4.5 inches. It's starting to get to that point where the formula, my equation of P equals M plus T plus J kicks in, which is project equals materials plus tools plus joinery. Well, once you go to materials that's 4.5 inches thick, then you start to have to upgrade the tools a bit. So basically what I'm doing is this. I'm using I'm using a Craig bit, and I'm using the stop collar on it, and I'm just setting that. Now that stop collar is going to go into the mortise up in here. It's going to go into this mortise. So I need to basically just set the top of this flush with the top of the board. And then by doing that, all I want to come out at the bottom is just the tip of that bit. I don't want the whole bit to come out. And the reason for that is that there's a lot of times one of the methods for doing this is we're going to be doing a method where we use a Forstner bit on the other end. Well, a Forstner bit does not like to stay put on a 3/8 inch hole, but it will stay put on a small hole like that. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to move to the drill press, because I do have a drill press, and again, this is a nice post. I have 2 of them, and I like the way they turned out, and I want to kind of keep going with this. This may end up actually being a bed or some sort of piece of furniture. It could be a table, whatever. We'll see. So I don't know if you noticed how difficult it was for me to get through my shop, but not only am I prototyping, which really makes a mess, because you know, you just have tools everywhere, but I'm also, it's fishing season just started and kayak season, so I'm working on getting the shop set for that as well. But I'm going to set this up now. So you may have noticed I brought out the equation, right? P equals N plus T, project equals, but so the project here is to make a hole that's 4.5 inches long. Well, not too many drill presses will actually do that. This happens to be the big Powermatic, right? So it has a 6-inch travel. Most drill presses, smaller ones, most smaller ones will stop out at like 2.5 or something, 2 3/4, and then all kinds of stuff in between. But when I send this down, if I unlock my lock right here, and now I am going to use the lock, but if I unlock it, in fact, the bottom one was locked as well. So because I want a lot of travel here, I'm going to set up. So I'm just touching, and then we'll bring her up from there. Again, I've got 4.5 inches to go. I have a total of 6 available, so that's close enough. Horseshoes and hand grenades. And then you really don't even need a fence for this, because once you start drilling, that's not going anywhere. So I've got a fence there, and you saw me fooling around with it. But, you know, I'm going to go ahead. You don't need it, but I'm going to go ahead and use it. Again, the more you do this, the more you have to work in your favor, the more accurate the hole is going to be. And I do want to get it to go fully straight through. So again, if you're going to do this and you have a smaller drill press, it's still a good idea to start with that drill press. Take it down like 2 inches or 2.5, whatever the thing will allow you to do. Pull it out, and then at least then you could finish it with a regular drill. But you have such a nice target going for you, you're going to be in good shape, right? Okay, so the other thing I want to do is again, there's all my travel. So I only need to travel to the bottom there. So this one I'm going to set my upper. Obviously I'm having a little trouble with the camera here. There we go. Okay. I'm going to set, once I have that down into there where it just goes through the wood, and I could put a sacrificial down there, but I'm just going to drop that down. And then now I know I'm stopping and starting at the right point. Then I'm not going to be able to catch everything, so I'm just going to catch the hole itself. I'm going to turn it on. Where's the switch? It's been a while. It's not plugged in now. So using that dimple that I made with the bolt, that's going to be my center. I'm good to go. I'm going to do multiple passes in, out, bring that wood back up. All right. And that's exactly what I'm looking for, is that tiny little hole. Again, if we needed to put a Forstner bit on there, Not that I would use one this large, but well, you know, don't put it past me, right? In fact, that's the cool thing about these is you can do, if you have Forstners, you can just take that and you could put something in there like a you know, an emblem, a logo or something like that. I mean, whatever fits in this side, basically use that as your washer. But what I'm getting at is that little point right there. If there was a big hole, like a 3/8 hole coming from there, then this thing is probably going to jump. You're not going to get a good clean hole. But if you have a tiny one like that, then you're good to go. Now, we're not going to do that on this particular one. This one, I'm going to make this basically a reversible. So I'll show you how I'm going to handle. I'm going to put a rectangular shaped washer in there in a second. All right, so again, I locked it back in. I have a couple of PVC pieces to protect it against the clamps, right? And I'm using the same jig template in this case, as I did before. It's still set up for 4.5 spread. I have that hole to work off of. Now that one, what I need to do is take, because I want to find center with that. So I'm going to run a light line that I can erase later. And then I'm going to put the template, this time I'm going to use a different one. This time I'm going to use this one. And so if again, you can't see it, but there's a hole right here, a peephole. Well, I can put that baby right over the top of, it's only a 1/4 inch hole, so it really helps me align. So I'm good to go on that. And again, I use my clamp if I can find it. Okay, I'm connected to the vac again, same thing as before, same bit, everything's the same, except I'm using a different mortise guide right here. And then I'm going to do the same thing, which is 1, 2, 3. And I'm going to do 3 because, again, I want to make basically a reversible post. So I can send this around in one direction to fit either our large DIY, which is 2 3/4 by 3/4 tenon, threaded tenon, or we can fit one of the fabricated ones I have, which is 11/16 by 2 11/16 or something like that. Then I have some of these, which are the 3-hole ones. And so by doing what I'm doing here, I'll actually be able to use stuff that has the smaller tenon, even the diagonal stuff that's cut. And again, that's because I'm prototyping. I want to be able to have all these options available in one spot for me. So that's why I'm doing it this way. Well, because it's going to be a mortise, and I want to be able to, you're always going to have these screws sticking up just a little bit. And so even though you've got a 1/4 inch of steel, you still need to add, I add a 1/8. So everything I do is coming out to 3/8 basically as far as depth goes. And that way there's room in there for that as well. There's a bypass to that. I've done it before, and that is if you have the access, you can actually countersink or counterbore, whatever you call it, the steel, and then these will sit in there as well. But it's then you got to have even more tools, right? So headgear, turn on everything. Turn on the router, bringing it to the very first setting. And away we go. Now, I'd be totally surprised if that took more than a minute. Now, I'm looking down there, and I see that bolt hole off. And again, this is why I do prototyping. Well, it's okay in the center going this way, but it's off going the other direction, and that's because I probably wasn't careful enough in staying centered. And so again, 4.5 inches to go through with a drill press and make a perfect hole isn't all that easy. So there's a way that I could have done that and fixed it, prevented it, and I know what to do. I just didn't do it. I didn't think about it. And so again, glad this is a prototype. If it were a client project, I could hide that in no time flat and nobody would ever know. In fact, if I delete this part of the film, then you won't know either, but I do want you to know that, okay, it's very doable. A real simple fix is actually take a 1/2-inch drill and just bore out the hole. That's another way to do it. So there's just different ways of fixing that. I won't go into that, but I will cover that in some future installment of this. So I'm going to pull off the template. And you're seeing all this in real time. I speed up the film once in a while for the mundane type stuff, but this is the real thing, So now I have that, right? Now I have to find my bolt that I put somewhere. So that's one of them, right? And then let me just test and see if I'm going to undo the clamps. Okay, again, prototyping, but I built a number of these already, and so I kind of have inventory of some of the common stuff around. And that is I think that's a 4-inch. That's a 4-inch, right? A 4-inch bolt. And so because of the mortise on this side and the mortise on the other side, you don't need a 4.5-inch, and plus this goes in a little ways, and all that. So this is just a simple trial of, okay, is that going to fit? Yes, it hits. That's what I'm looking for, is for that to come out at least a 1/4 inch. If it comes out another 1/2 inch, it's okay, because again, we put that hole in the end there.